You're only fit to be a waitress." Laughter burst out, a few voices sneering. "You don't deserve to lift your head in this party." The young woman lowered her gaze, the tray trembling in her hands, mocked by the crowd. Then she suddenly stepped toward a stranger and whispered, "Pretend to be my husband. Help me escape him." He wrapped his arm around her, his cold eyes sweeping across. "My wife doesn't need to hear this garbage." The hall fell silent, then erupted in shock as the name was announced. Lucas Blackwell, chairman of Blackwell Global Holdings. Her name was Maya Torres, just 25, with a kind of beauty that didn't scream for attention. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, no makeup, no jewelry, just a plain black dress that could have come from any thrift store. She stood in the glittering ballroom of the Grand Meridian Hotel, surrounded by chandeliers and people dripping in wealth. The tray of champagne flutes shook in her hands, not because she was weak, but because the words still stung. Derek Sloan, her ex, stood across the room, his arm around a new girl who sparkled like she'd been polished for the occasion. His voice had carried over the crowd, sharp and mean when he spotted Maya. Look at her still slinging drinks. Guess some people never climb out of the gutter. The room laughed, and Maya's fingers tightened around the tray, her knuckles pale. Derek wasn't alone in his cruelty. His mother, Vivian Sloan, glided over her diamond necklace, catching the light like a warning. She was 55, her face tight from one too many procedures, her smile as fake as the flowers on the tables. "Oh, Maya, dear," she said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "It's so fitting to see you here. Serving where you belong." The words landed like a slap, and a few guests snickered, their eyes flicking to Maya's worn shoes. A man in a tailored suit, some hedge fund guy with slicked back hair and a smirk, leaned in. Bet she used to chase Derek for his wallet. Classic gold digger move, right? The group around him chuckled, their glasses clinking as if they'd just shared a great joke. A woman in a sleek emerald gown, her hair piled high, and her voice dripping with condescension, leaned toward her friend loud enough for Maya to hear. "I mean, look at her dress. Did she pull it out of a laundry basket?" The friend, a guy with a Rolex that screamed new money, snorted. "Probably. I bet she's here just to sneak a few free drinks." The crowd's laughter grew, a wave of it, rolling through the room, and Maya's tray tilted slightly, a single flute teetering before she caught it. Her face stayed calm, but her fingers brushed the edge of her sleeve, tugging it down like she was hiding something. The room didn't notice, too busy feeding off their own cruelty. Maya didn't look up. She kept her eyes on the tray, adjusting a glass that didn't need adjusting. Her lips pressed together just for a moment, like she was swallowing something bitter. But she didn't cry. She didn't snap. She just stood there, letting the room's cruelty wash over her like a wave she'd learned to weather. A woman in a red dress, all fake lashes and too much perfume, chimed in. "Why is she even here? Doesn't she know this isn't her crowd?" The laughter grew louder, and Maya's tray wobbled again, a single drop of champagne spilling onto her hand. She wiped it on her dress, quick and quiet, like it never happened. Then something shifted. Maya's eyes lifted, scanning the room, not in panic, but in search of something. Or someone. That's when she saw him. A man standing alone near the bar, his back to the crowd. He wasn't like the others. No flashy watch, no loud tie. Just a plain white shirt, sleeves rolled up, and dark slacks that didn't scream money. His name was Lucas Blackwell, though nobody in the room knew it yet. Maya didn't know it either. All she saw was a stranger who didn't belong to this pack of wolves. She took a breath, squared her shoulders, and walked toward him, her steps steady, despite the eyes boring into her back. As Maya crossed the room, a man with a booming voice and a too-tight bow tie blocked her path. His glass raised like he was toasting her humiliation. "Hey, sweetheart, don't trip over those cheap shoes. Wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself more." The crowd around him roared, and Maya paused, her tray steady, but her eyes flicking to his. She didn't speak, just tilted her head slightly like she was sizing him up. "Careful," she said, her voice soft but clear. "You might trip over your own ego." The man's grin faltered, and a few guests shifted uncomfortably, their laughs dying out. Maya kept walking her back straight, leaving the man red-faced and muttering to his friends. When she reached Lucas, she leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "Pretend to be my husband. Help me escape him." Lucas turned, his face unreadable, his eyes a deep gray that seemed to see right through her. For a second, it looked like he might say no. Then he nodded just once and slid his arm around her shoulders. The weight of it was warm, steady like an anchor in a storm. He turned to face the crowd, his voice low but clear. "My wife doesn't need to hear this garbage." The words cut through the noise like a knife, and the room went quiet, every head turning to stare. Derek's laugh broke the silence, sharp and forced. He was 28, handsome in that polished private school way, but his eyes were cruel, always looking for a weak spot. "Husband," he said, stepping closer, his new girlfriend clinging to his arm like a trophy. "What this guy in that shirt?" "Come on, Maya, you're embarrassing yourself." The crowd tittered again, feeding off his confidence. Vivian joined in, her voice dripping with disdain. "If this is your husband, dear, where's the ring? Surely a man like that could afford one." She smirked, expecting Maya to crumble. A woman with a pearl clutch, some socialite who lived for gossip, piped up from the edge of the crowd. "Yeah, let's see the ring. Or is this just another sad little lie?" Her voice was all sugar, but her eyes were sharp, like she was waiting for Maya to break. The laughter came again, louder this time, and Maya's face flushed, her jaw tightening. She glanced at her bare hand, her fingers curling slightly like she was hiding them. But Lucas didn't flinch. He reached into his pocket, slow and deliberate, and pulled out a ring. Not just any ring, a diamond cut in a way that caught the light and threw it back like a star. The band had a faint engraving, a crest nobody recognized, but everyone felt the weight of. He slid it onto Maya's finger, his touch careful but firm. The diamond gleamed and the room went still again. Derek's mouth opened, then closed like a fish gasping for air. Where'd you get that?" He stammered, his voice smaller now. Lucas's smile was cold, almost dangerous. "You think a guy like me can't afford a ring like this?" He didn't raise his voice, didn't need to. The question hung there unanswered, and the crowd's laughter died in their throats. Maya stood straighter, the ring heavy on her hand, her eyes fixed on Derek like she was seeing him for the first time. As the crowd whispered, a woman in a gold sequin dress, her voice loud and brassy, pushed forward. "Oh, please. A ring doesn't change who she is. She's still nobody." Her words were meant to sting, and they did. Maya's hand twitched the tray she'd set down nearby, rattling slightly, but she didn't look away. Instead, she picked up a single glass from the tray, holding it out to the woman. "Thirsty?" she asked, her voice calm, almost polite. The woman froze, her face flushing as the crowd's eyes turned to her. The gesture was small, but it was enough to make the woman step back, her confidence crumbling under Maya's steady gaze. But Derek wasn't done. He couldn't be. His ego wouldn't let him. He stepped closer, his face red, his voice louder. "Ring or no ring, she's still just a waitress. You can't polish trash, man." The words were meant to wound, and they did. Maya's shoulders tensed, and for a split second her lips parted like she might speak. Instead, she closed them, her eyes narrowing just enough to make Derek falter. Vivian, sensing her son's momentum, jumped in. "Exactly. She's nothing. Always will be. You can't change where you come from, darling." Her voice was all syrupy venom, the kind that sounded sweet until it burned. The room seemed to close in the air, thick with judgment. A man in a velvet blazer, some tech bro who'd made his millions too fast, laughed from the sidelines. "Bet she's playing him for the cash. Classic move. Seen it 100 times." The crowd nodded, their whispers growing bolder, their eyes slicing into Maya like knives. She didn't move, didn't blink, but her hand brushed against the tray. She'd set down, her fingers lingering on the edge, like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Then a soft clink. A napkin ring fell from the tray, rolling across the floor. Maya bent to pick it up, her movements slow, deliberate, like she was reclaiming something. The crowd watched, their whispers faltering, as she stood back up, her eyes locking onto the tech bros. "Seen it 100 times, she asked, her voice quiet but piercing. "Then why are you still watching?" The tech bros' smirk vanished, and the room's energy shifted like a tide turning. A woman in a corner, her fur stole slipping off her shoulder, muttered to her companion, "She's got some nerve. I'll give her that." But her tone wasn't mocking anymore. It was uneasy, like she was starting to question her own place in this game. Maya set the napkin ring back on the tray, her hand steady now, and turned back to Lucas. His arm was still around her, his presence like a shield, but it was her own strength that held the room's attention now. The crowd's laughter had faded, replaced by a low hum of uncertainty. Across the room, a man in a pinstripe suit, his face flushed from too much wine, decided to push his luck. "Come on, Blackwell. You can do better than her. She's just a prop in a cheap dress." The words were slurred, but they carried, and a few guests chuckled nervously, waiting to see what would happen. Maya's fingers tightened around the tray, but she didn't look at the man. Instead, she turned to Lucas, her eyes searching his for a moment. He gave her a small nod, like he knew what she needed. She stepped forward, her voice low but clear. "A prop," she said, her eyes locking onto the man's. "Then why are you so scared of me?" The man's glass slipped wine splashing onto his shirt, and the room went quiet again, the air charged with something new. Lucas's arm tightened around her just enough to steady her, but he didn't speak. Not yet. The air in the room felt heavy, like it was pressing down on everyone. Maya's face was still flushed, but she lifted her chin, her eyes meeting Derek's for the first time. "You done?" she asked, her voice quiet but sharp, like a blade slipping through silk. The room froze. Derek blinked, caught off guard, and for a moment, nobody knew what to say. Then Vivian laughed, a high, brittle sound. "Oh, sweetheart, don't embarrass yourself further. Just go back to your little tray." The crowd chuckled again, but it was weaker now, like they were starting to sense something wasn't right. As the laughter faded, a waiter passing by stumbled, his tray brushing against Maya's arm. A glass tipped and champagne splashed across her dress, soaking the front. The room gasped, some in shock, others in delight, ready to pounce on the fresh humiliation. A woman with a diamond tiara, her voice sharp as glass, called out, "Oh, look, now she really fits in," drenched and desperate. The crowd's laughter swelled again, but Maya didn't flinch. She set her tray down, slow and careful, and reached for a napkin, dabbing at the stain like it was nothing. "Accidents happen," she said, her voice steady, her eyes flicking to the woman. "But some people make their own messes." The woman's smile froze, and the crowd's laughter stuttered, like they weren't sure who was winning anymore. Lucas stepped forward, of his movement so smooth it was almost casual. He handed his phone to the event's MC, a nervous-looking guy in a too-tight tux. "Play this," Lucas said, his voice calm but final. The MC fumbled with the phone, and a moment later the massive LED screen behind the stage flickered to life. A news headline flashed across it: "Lucas Blackwell, chairman of Blackwell Global Holdings, steps out at charity gala." A photo followed Lucas in the same plain shirt, standing next to a private jet. The room erupted, gasps and whispers colliding like a wave. Derek's face went white, his glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. Maya's eyes widened just for a second before she caught herself. She looked at Lucas, her lips parting slightly, but she didn't say a word. The crowd was buzzing now, people craning their necks to get a better look at the man they dismissed as nobody. Vivian's smile froze her hands, clutching her necklace like it might save her. This can't be," she muttered, her voice barely audible. Derek just stood there, his mouth moving but no words coming out. The tech bro in the velvet blazer took a step back, suddenly very interested in his drink. But the room wasn't done with Maya yet. A man with a goatee, his suit screaming old money, stepped forward, his voice loud enough to carry over the chaos. "So, what if he's rich? She's still a nobody who lucked into a ring. You can't buy class." His words were meant to rally the crowd, and some nodded, their whispers picking up again. Maya's hand brushed the ring, her fingers lingering on the crest. She didn't look at the man, but her voice was clear when she spoke. "Class isn't something you wear," she said, her eyes flicking to his gaudy cufflinks. "It's something you show." The man's face reddened, and he turned away, muttering to himself, as the crowd's murmurs grew quieter. The MC, still holding Lucas's phone, stammered into the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to have Mr. Lucas Blackwell with us tonight." The room exploded into applause, but it was nervous, forced, like they were all trying to cover their tracks. Maya stood there, the ring glinting on her finger, her face unreadable. She didn't smile, didn't gloat. She just looked at the crowd, her eyes steady, like she was taking in every face, every whisper, every laugh that had cut her earlier. As the applause died down, a woman in a silver gown, her voice trembling with fake sympathy, approached Maya. "Oh, honey, we didn't know. You should have told us who you were with." Her smile was all teeth, but her eyes darted to Lucas like she was calculating her next move. Maya didn't respond, just tilted her head slightly, her gaze unwavering. The woman faltered, her hand fluttering to her chest. "I mean, we're all friends here, right?" She pressed, but Maya just picked up her tray again, setting it down with a deliberate clink. "Friends don't need to be told," she said, her voice soft but final. The woman backed away, her heels clicking as she retreated into the crowd. Vivian recovered first, her voice syrupy again as she stepped forward. "Oh, Mr. Blackwell, what a misunderstanding. We had no idea. Maya, dear, you should have said something." Her smile was all teeth, but her eyes were desperate. Derek, still reeling, tried to follow her lead. "Maya, I messed up. I didn't mean it. Come on, we can talk this out. You and me like before." His voice cracked, and his new girlfriend looked like she wanted to disappear. A few guests chimed in, their voices fake and bright. "We've always respected the Blackwell family. Such a lovely couple." But the crowd's desperation only grew. A man in a silk scarf, his voice oily and practiced, sidled up to Lucas. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm sure we can clear this up. My firm's been dying to work with you." He handed Lucas a business card, his fingers trembling slightly. Lucas took it, glanced at it, and let it fall to the floor without a word. The man's face went pale, and he backed away, his scarf suddenly looking like a noose. Maya watched, her expression unchanged, but her hand brushed Lucas's arm, a small gesture that said more than words could. The room's energy shifted again, the crowd sensing the ground moving beneath them. Maya didn't move. Her eyes were cold, like she was looking through them, not at them. She didn't answer, didn't nod, didn't give them an inch. Lucas's hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a silent promise that he wasn't going anywhere. The room felt smaller now, the chandeliers less bright, the crowd less sure of themselves. One by one, people started to drift away, their whispers turning to murmurs of panic. Maya set her tray down, slow and deliberate, the clink of the glasses louder than it should have been. As the crowd thinned, a woman with a clipboard, some event planner with too much makeup, approached Maya, her voice low but urgent. "Miss Torres, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. Can I get you a new dress? Anything you need." Her hands fluttered like she was trying to fix a disaster she'd helped create. Maya looked at her, then down at the champagne stain on her dress. "This dress is fine," she said, her voice steady. "It's been through worse." The planner's smile faltered and she hurried away, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a shield. Maya's words hung in the air, a quiet reminder that she wasn't the one who needed fixing. Lucas's voice cut through the noise, low and steady. "The Sloan family will no longer be part of any Blackwell alliances." He didn't shout, didn't need to. The words landed like a guillotine. Within minutes, phones started buzzing. Guests pulled out their screens, their faces paling as they read the news. Sloan Corp's stock was tanking, the numbers dropping faster than anyone could process. Vivian gasped, her hand flying to her chest, and Derek sank into a chair, his head in his hands. The crowd scattered, some heading for the exits, others pretending to check their coats, anything to avoid the fallout. The room was nearly empty now, but one guest lingered, a woman in a velvet cape, her eyes sharp with ambition. She approached Maya, her voice low and conspiratorial. "You played this well, girl. Got yourself a billionaire. Smart move." Her smile was meant to be a compliment, but it dripped with envy. Maya didn't flinch. She turned to the woman, her eyes steady, and handed her an empty glass from the tray. "Hold this," she said, her voice calm but firm. The woman took it confused, and Maya walked away, leaving her standing there, glass in hand, looking foolish. The crowd's whispers stopped, their eyes following Maya, as she moved with a quiet power they hadn't seen before. Maya watched it all, her face still, her hands steady now. She wasn't the same woman who'd walked in with a trembling tray. The ring on her finger caught the light again, and she glanced at it, her lips twitching just enough to hint at something, relief maybe, or something deeper. The room was emptying out, the laughter gone, the chandeliers, just lights now. But Derek wasn't done. He stood up, his face, twisted, his voice loud enough to turn heads. "She's using you, Blackwell. You think she cares? Nobody loves a girl like that. She's just after your money." A few guests nodded, their whispers starting up again. The woman in the red dress, her lipstick smudged, now muttered, "Exactly. Girls like her. It's always about the cash." Maya's shoulders sagged, just for a moment, her fingers brushing the ring like it might steady her. The words hit hard, and the air felt thick, like it was holding its breath. Then a soft sound, a car horn outside, sharp and familiar. Maya's eyes flicked to the window where a black sedan idled, its lines sleek and unmistakable. It was the same kind her father used to drive back when she was a kid, before the world taught her to hide who she was. Her hands stilled and she straightened, her face unreadable again. A man in a corner, his tie loosened and his voice bitter, called out, "She's got no heart, Blackwell! You're wasting your time." The words were meant to cut, and they did. Maya's fingers tightened around the ring, her knuckles white for a moment. But she didn't look at him. Instead, she turned to Lucas, her eyes soft but steady. "You didn't have to do this," she said, her voice low, almost a whisper. Lucas's hand found hers, his thumb brushing over the ring. "I wanted to," he said, his voice just as quiet. The man in the corner fell silent, his tie suddenly feeling too tight. Lucas turned to the crowd, his arm sliding around Maya's waist, and in front of everyone, he pulled her into a hug. Not a showy one, just real, like he meant it. She chose me when she thought I was nobody, he said, his voice clear, carrying across the room. If that's not love, what is? Maya's eyes glistened, a single tear slipping down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly, but not before she leaned into him, her voice a whisper. You could be a billionaire, but to me, you're just the guy who saved me tonight. The room went silent, and then slowly the applause started. Not the nervous kind from before, but real loud, like they had all been waiting for something true. As the applause grew, a woman in a black shawl, her eyes red from too much wine, stumbled forward. You don't deserve him, Maya. You're nothing but a leech. Her voice cracked, and the crowd turned their eyes sharp with judgment. Maya didn't respond, just looked at the woman, her gaze steady and unflinching. Lucas's hand tightened on her waist, but Maya stepped forward, her voice calm. You're shouting, she said, her tone almost gentle. But nobody's listening. The woman's face crumpled and she turned away, her shawl slipping to the floor as the crowd's applause drowned her out. Derek's face crumpled, his hands shaking as he backed away. Vivian was already gone, her heels clicking down the hallway. The news was spreading. Sloan Corp was done their name toxic now. The tech bro's phone pinged with a notification his firm had just dropped him as a partner, his social media already lighting up with screenshots of his comments. The woman in the red dress stood alone, her clutch forgotten on a table, her sponsorship deal with a luxury brand canceled in a single email. The consequences weren't loud or dramatic. They were just real, like gravity pulling everything back to earth. Outside, as Maya and Lucas stepped into the cool night air, a young waiter approached, his apron still tied on. Miss Torres, I saw what happened. You didn't deserve that. His voice was quiet, but his eyes were earnest, like he'd been waiting all night to say it. Maya paused, her hand still in Lucas's, and looked at the waiter. Thank you, she said, her voice soft but clear. You didn't have to say that. The waiter nodded, his face breaking into a small smile, and turned back to the hotel. Maya's shoulders relaxed, just a fraction, like a weight had lifted. Maya and Lucas walked out together, her hand in his, the ring still shining. She didn't look back, didn't need to. The crowd parted for them, their whispers fading into nothing. Outside, the night air was cool, and Maya stopped for a moment, her breath visible in the cold. She looked at Lucas, her eyes steady now, like she had found her footing again. He didn't say much, just squeezed her hand, and they kept walking. Sometimes life kicks you when you're down. Sometimes it feels like the whole world's laughing. But you keep going. You hold your head up. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stand, and when you do, the truth finds a way to catch up. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below and hit follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and finally healing.